Throughout history, decisive actions by influential individuals have shaped the politics of entire regions. In this video, we explore the contributions of the Chinese general Ban Chao, whose military and diplomatic campaigns during the Eastern Han Dynasty weakened the Xiongnu's influence in the Tarim Basin. These efforts resulted in the re-establishment of the Chinese protectorate lost during the Xin Dynasty, strengthening China's control over key sections of the Silk Road, and facilitating trade with the West. Chinese empires quite often used their historical name Western regions as the general name for the kingdoms located in the oases of the Tarim Basin, in modern-day southern Xinjiang. Due to its strategic location on the Silk Road, the Tarim Basin were of historical importance to China. Wang Mang's controversial reforms weakened the authority of the Chinese Xin Dynasty, creating opportunities for the kingdoms of the Tarim Basin to assert their independence. In 16th Common Era, many of these states rebelled and allied with the Xiongnu, leveraging the instability caused by the Red Eyebrows Rebellion to resist Chinese control. The Chinese protector general was killed during these uprisings, and the Xin dynasty's internal turmoil prevented it from dispatching an army to suppress the rebellions. However, the Yarkand kingdom retained a pro-Chinese orientation. Its ruler, King Yan, who had spent significant time in China and admired its culture, offered refuge to the family of the slain protector general and Chinese refugees. King Yan's son, King Kang, halted the Xiongnu's advance in 25 CE and expanded Yarkand's territory. In 29 Common Era, he established relations with the Eastern Han Dynasty and was appointed Grand Commander-in-Chief of the Western Territories. Meanwhile, the Xiongnu increased their tax demands on their allies in the Tarim Basin, further consolidating Yarkand's position as a regional power. Following King Kang's death in 33 Common Era, his brother Shen ascended the throne. Shen's autocratic policies and harsh rule led to widespread dissatisfaction, culminating in a rebellion by the inhabitants of Khotan, the city of the kingdom dependent on the Yarkand kingdom. The Kushan Army, supported by a conspiracy of Yarkand nobles, captured King Shen and executed him the following year. The Eastern Han Dynasty sought to reassert control over the Tarim Basin, a critical region through which key trade routes to the west passed. In 73, a Chinese army drove the Xiongnu out of the Hami oasis and established the fortified military agricultural camp Yawulu to provide food for Chinese troops in the Tarim Basin. Chinese commander sent his officer Ban Chao, at the head of a small military detachment with the task of restoring Chinese influence over the Shantan kingdom. At the same time, a Xiongnu delegation arrived in Shantan to strengthen their claims to the region. Acting swiftly, Ban Chao uncovered the location of the Xiongnu envoys through espionage, launched a surprise nighttime assault, and eliminated many of them. This display of decisive action compelled the king of Shantan to sever ties with the Xiongnu and ally with the Eastern Han Dynasty. Meanwhile, the kingdom of Khotan, under Xiongnu's influence, had grown increasingly assertive. Ban Chao advanced toward Khotan with his small force. Despite being heavily outnumbered by the army of Khotan over the Chinese military detachment, Ban Chao's reputation and the news of his recent actions, related to the night attack on the Xiongnu camp, intimidated the king of Khotan, who executed the Xiongnu representative and pledged allegiance to the Eastern Han Dynasty. In 74, Ban Chao arrived in Kashgar with military detachments consisting of Chinese and Khotanese forces. With the assistance of dissatisfied factions within Kashgar, Ban Chao arrested the pro-Xiongnu ruler of Kashgar and replaced him with a local leader, who was favorable to the Eastern Han Empire. That same year, the Jushi kingdom submitted to the Eastern Han authority. In 75, the united army of the Kuchu and Gumo kingdoms, besieged Ban Chao's forces in Kashgar. After a long siege, Ban Chao was forced to retreat from Kashgar to Khotan. The victors did not carry out massacres and looting in the surrendered Kashgar. Therefore, when Ban Chao returned to Kashgar in 76, his troops suffered significant losses due to fierce resistance from the Kashgarians. The Xiongnu destroyed the Chinese military outpost at Yawulu in the Hami oasis, disrupting vital supply routes. The logistical challenge of transporting food and supplies over vast distances from central China became prohibitively expensive. As a result, in 77, the Chinese emperor ordered the cessation of military operations in the Tarim Basin and returned regular troops to central China. But Ban Chao and his military force were not returned to central China. Ban Chao was left in the region with only a small force. Nevertheless, his exceptional leadership and diplomatic skills allowed him to consolidate the remaining Chinese forces. Over time, he assembled an army of approximately 10,000 troops and drove the Xiongnu troops out of the Gumo kingdom. Recognizing the importance of strong alliances, Ban Chao advised the Chinese emperor to renew diplomatic ties with the Wusun, a powerful nomadic confederation known for its formidable cavalry. In 80, Ban Chao requested assistance and received an army from the Wusun for military action against the kingdom of Kucha. In 83, the Eastern Han Dynasty established the position of chief official of the western regions, a role intended to oversee the empire's interests in the Tarim Basin. Ban Chao was the first appointed to this position, strengthening his authority in the region. That same year, he received reinforcements of 800 soldiers, enabling him to continue his efforts to secure the influence of the Eastern Han Dynasty in Central Asia. By 87, Ban Chao had established his headquarters in Kashgar. His activity aimed to reduce the impact of the Xiongnu on kingdoms of the Tarim Basin, as part of the Eastern Han's war against Xiongnu. In the same year, he destroyed a group of about 700 emigrant warriors from Kashgar who were trying to capture Kashgar. In 88, Ban Chao, leading a united allied army consisting of troops from Khotan and Shantung, approached the city of Yarkand, whose government at that time was an ally of the Xiongnu. The united army of the Kucha and Gumo kingdoms came to the aid of the king of Yarkand. Ban Chao refused to launch a direct attack on the united army of Yarkand's allies. He employed a misinformation strategy to mislead the allied forces of Yarkand's defenders. In the presence of captured warriors of the Kushan Army, he gave orders to the commanders of his two detachments to encircle the enemy troops. After this, the prisoners were allowed to escape and they told their commanders about Ban Chao's plan. The allied army commanders believed this misinformation and went into the desert to ambush Ban Chao's troops. After the Yarkand allied forces departed, Ban Chao ordered an assault on Yarkand. As a result, Ban Chao's army captured the city. Tired of useless maneuvers in the desert, the allies of Yarkand retreated to their kingdoms. The Kushan Empire was to the west of the Tarim Basin. The aggressive policy of the Kushan kings was directed to the west and south, where they fought with the Parthians and Sakas. The natural boundaries between Central and East Asia were the boundaries of interests of the Eastern Han Dynasty and the Kushan kings, who did not interfere in each other's internal politics. In 88, the Kushan king Kanishka sent an embassy to China, reportedly to arrange a marriage alliance. The embassy's route lay through territory under the control of Ban Chao, who did not allow the ambassador to pass and forced him to return. There is no information in the available sources about the reason that prompted Ban Chao to inflict this insult on the Kushan king, although it can be interpreted as Ban Chao exercising his discretion in regional policy. In 90, a large Kushan army, consisting of heavily armed cavalry, entered the Tarim Basin. Ban Chao's strategic plan was to collect all the food supplies in the fortresses and fortified cities and wait until the Kushan army began to starve and was forced to retreat. This plan was successfully carried out. Fortified walls, effective defensive measures, and the use of crossbows made Ban Chao's forces resilient. The Chinese had all the strategic food reserves, which the Kushan army had little of, so the Chinese warriors were well fed, while the Kushan ones were starving. As a result, the Kushan army was forced to retreat from the Tarim Basin. In 90, Chinese regular troops expelled the Xiongnu from the Hami Oasis, re-establishing Ban Chao's direct connection with the Eastern Han Dynasty. After China regained control over the Hami Oasis, the Jushi kingdom became an ally of China. The allies of the Xiongnu, the northern kingdoms of the Tarim Basin, found themselves isolated and deprived of the aid of the Xiongnu at that time being routed by the Xianbei troops. In 91, the northern kingdoms of Kuchu and Gumo capitulated to Ban Chao and accepted the protectorate of the Eastern Han Dynasty. The enemies of China united their forces in the kingdom of Ashi. In the autumn of 94, Ban Chao, the head of a large force, augmented by allied troops, captured Ashi. The restoration of the Eastern Han Dynasty's power over all kingdoms of the Tarim Basin was achieved through the tenacity and determination of Ban Chao. He was awarded the title of the Protector General of the Western regions.